Hello, everyone. Welcome to this interview. I'm Jess from Fighting Spirit Film Festival, and we are here today with Bao Tran, the filmmaker, writer, director behind The Paper Tigers, which is getting its UK premiere tomorrow at Fighting Spirit Film Festival 2021 at Stratford Picturehouse. Woo!
Yo, Stratford. Wish we were there. Missing out, and wish we could present the movie to you. But we're sending you all this love here.
How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm all good, all glittery. Let's get into
Yes, yes.
questions. How did you get started in filmmaking? What was your introduction to film?
Well, I am what say the first generation of my family to be born in the U.S. I'm Vietnamese by ethnicity, and we came to the U.S. In the late '70s. So I was born uh, in the States, in Seattle, to be Washington, to be more specific. And so I grew up, watching a lot of films, both of different kinds of from both continents, right? So at home we'd watch a lot of TVB shows and Hong Kong movies and Asian movies, and in theaters we'd watch Spielberg and James Cameron, and so we'd be able to kind of see all the kind of like all these types of entertainment. So I loved it all, and then especially with Bruce Lee, growing up with Bruce Lee, that was a major figure to watch. But I would say as a fan. I think it wasn't until I really got into Jackie Chan that I really wanted to understand filmmaking, because he has a certain flair and a style to not only his fight scenes in the martial arts, but also the filmmaking. You could really feel the attention and care that he had around that. So I really wanted to kind of dive into that. And so that just put me down the whole rabbit hole, because, his inspirations were, Charlie Chaplin and Buster Keaton and Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire. So that kind of opened up the whole world of older films for me. So it was like it was a wrap by then. So it was just down that hole of just discovering movies and falling in love with movies as a whole.
What was your writing process for The Paper Tigers like, from idea to the writing of the piece? Where did you get your inspiration for the story?
Tortured. I think for every writer, it has a little bit difficulty to try to get your ideas and your feelings out onto the page. For me, I would think the seed is because, like I said, I started making films earlier on. I did martial arts when I was young, um, and as you get into the career of filmmaking, you kind of have all the ups and downs and the seedier side of the business. So a lot of the idealism that I had, when I started out making films, I was really inspired by Robert Rodriguez, Rebel Without a Crew, and the whole ethos of kind of guerrilla filmmaking and just doing it for the love and the passion. But once you go into it as a job and occupation, it's kind of a different take on the craft. So I was feeling a little burnt out, kind of cynical about a certain things, and so I just thought back to kind of what it was like to have that first love with martial arts and film, and really kind of rediscover those emotions and what martial arts had meant for me. So this is kind of essentially the story of these heroes, of these tigers in the movie, is that they rediscover their roots. They remember, where they came from and all the things that made them who they are, and challenges them to whether they think it's still valuable to this day. So that's kind of it in a nutshell, just finding that inspiration as far as the story. But I got to shout out the UK, because one of our inspirations was Shaun of the Dead.
Uh,
And we had wanted to do for Kung Fu movies what Shaun of the Dead did for zombie movies, just that loving to the genre, and very honoring, but still kind of like willing to have fun with it, to twist it, to break it a little bit. And but all within, that from a point of just loving that history of film. So that's kind of the whole kind of front to back side of how I came about to be for the script.
mhm. So I read when you were seeking funding for The Paper Tigers, you were met with some resistance from some Asian Americans who opposed the film because of the martial arts genre being considered a stereotype for Asian characters. How did you deal with the resistance, and how did you avoid writing caricature or stereotypes for an Asian American protagonist or other characters?
Yeah, I think for us primarily we wanted to tell a story that was truthful to our experience. Like I said, I'm from Seattle, and the history of Seattle is was crucial for Bruce Lee when he first came to America. You know, he when he first came to the U.S., he went to school here. He opened his kung fu school here. He met his wife here, and he opened the whole ragtag school of kung fu school with students that were all different races and all different creeds and religions, and got a lot of flack for it from the Chinatown elders. And so we still live in that legacy because the people that he had taught still teach kung fu to this day. And so this history of him breaking borders and him basically, you know, crossing cultural boundaries by teaching kung fu is still felt now, and his influence, you know, will continue on. And so we wanted to be very honest to the experience of a multicultural kung fu club, which is actually what you're going to see, you know, in most of these days, especially, you know, kung fu schools across America or anywhere outside of China. And so we started from that, just that place of truth. So once we were going out to pitch, I think a lot of Asian Americans, in particular, had issues with it just because they had in their mind what they thought it was going to be versus what we were actually, you know, seeking to do. And so we've had, you know, obviously 40, 50 years of martial arts genre, and especially in Hollywood, and depiction of Asian Americans in martial arts and movies haven't been the greatest, and haven't been the most in-depth, you know, oftentimes one-dimensional or stereotypical. So I think they have a lot of those reservations, and deservedly so, to have to kind of like contend with this new idea, like, here's us Asian Americans trying to make a kung fu movie. Isn't that a bit regressive? But you know, for us to kind of push our story forward and be honest about it, that is the Asian American experience. And so that's, I think it was just like people were apprehensive at first because we've been, you know, pushed around with whitewashing and race bending for so long that, you know, there was just some nervousness. But I think once people kind of saw what it was, I think a lot of people have come around to it. So, but again, you know, we are just kind of one expression of many Asian American stories. So I don't think there needs to be an end all be all of what an Asian American film is.
That's really good to hear. And also, in a way, it honors Bruce Lee, and because it's also shot in Seattle, it's part of Asian American history and Seattle history. I think that's really cool.
Absolutely. Thank you.
How did you envision and create the action sequences?
Well, I worked with my action director, Ken Kidegwa, who you'll see in the film feature prominently. We've worked on many films for many years previous to this, so we have kind of a great working relationship. But also we think on the same lines in terms of what action and choreography is. Like, we wanted choreography to tell the story and push the characters forward, so that you're always kind of like getting something out of the fight scenes versus just the story just stopping and then here's a fight scene and then go on. So that's just something that we always wanted to kind of go for with the type of films that we were making. So that was kind of like a great starting point with that collaboration. And just as we were trying to figure out the action design for this story, it was also trying to find a right way that felt appropriate for the characters and the world that we're trying to create. Because these guys are out of shape. They're not in the top of their game. They're not as sharp as they used to be. So we actually have a kind of a tale of two cities, or two characters here, where their younger selves are amazing. They kick ass. They KO. There's one punch knockouts. There's all these like really dynamic fight scenes. But then what does that look like when they get older, when they're out of shape? And we really wanted to kind of like embrace that and really just dive in and see what that would look like, even if it meant like they didn't look flashy, they didn't look, you know, that great, but that was part of what the story that we're trying to tell. And so that was kind of a bit of a deconstruction, I think, for us, because for us, we've studied Hong Kong movies ad nauseum. We love, you know, that aesthetic where it's very pristine, precise, beautiful, choreographed stuff. But this one is a bit of kind of like mussing your hair up, you know, just kind of dirtying up the image a little bit, so that's a little bit messy and showing these guys trying to get by. And so a lot of that design that we had with the actors was trying to get them to not do things so clean and crisp, but also to, you know, just their own bodies are just not going to be as coordinated because they're older. All the actors did their own stunts, by the way. We couldn't afford, you know, a stunt double. So they had to kind of move from their own frame and then their own bodies and really kind of express the choreography already through, you know, an older body. in the case of Ron Yuan, he's who plays on Hing, he gained about 60 pounds for the role. So he was already even heavier. He probably is the best mover and most experienced screen fighter among the three tigers. But when you put on 60 pounds and you put on that much weight, your body's going to move differently. And so everyone was like, it's a bit kind of a new thing for all of us. So that was kind of the exciting, but also kind of daunting part of it, just trying to explore what that looks like, because we haven't really seen anyone that really has kind of like dealt with this old age choreography. Maybe there's a gag here and there, but really kind of deal with these characters as you go with them. As the movie progresses, you're still with them and their bodies are breaking down the further along it goes. So that's kind of the creative journey that we had with the choreography and the action design. And it was also, like I said, deconstructing, because we wanted to almost like unteach ourselves, because when we go for sometimes we go for the strongest take where they punch or they kick and it's really clean, but sometimes the next best take is better, or the not so good take, the NG, you end up using, because then it reflects these characters trying to do it versus actually actually executing the kick well. So
more realistic.
Exactly, yeah. And that's kind of the fine point of just trying to figure out, where to kind of pull back, because you still need to connect visually. The choreography still needs to have some type of impact, but you are dealing with three old guys. What does that look like?
And final question: what do you see / hope for the future of martial arts / action films, and for yourself?
I dare not say what's for myself. Who knows? The world tomorrow. Tomorrow, what comes tomorrow, we'll find out. I think as a whole for action films, what could be really interesting now is there's a little bit more of a respect for the action team. In the East or in Hong Kong, you had the action director who basically runs the unit and, even can dictate from blocking to lighting to choreography to shot design to editing. All those things, were owned under one house, as it were. And when these filmmakers first came to the US, there was a lot of difficulty because there wasn't really a department or an understanding of what that would look like, in US films for particular. And so there was kind of a gap of understanding and collaboration. I think in recent years, especially say with the rise of a lot of these younger filmmakers that have been educated, say, by both Eastern films, but work in, Western films, I think that's going to be a really interesting process. And obviously with the incredible success of Shang-Chi, Brad Allen, rest in peace, incredible influence in terms of like setting the stakes of what an action designer can do or what an action director can do, especially with a full-on team that can dictate, shots and all cutting and all those things and own it from all those processes. I think that's going to be really interesting on the big level. Obviously, we've been doing it forever on the independent side, but it'll be interesting to see what it kind of looks like on the bigger studio side. So as a whole, I think that just makes everybody better and stronger, and we're going to have more exciting films come out.
I think this year has been a really good year for Asian cinema and Asian filmmakers. I can say that it's been a very good year, despite obviously everything that's been happening. I think the shining cinema is one of the shining lights that we have and can give us hope.
Absolutely. I think there's something in general, maybe just that we could, for our film, that we can bring a smile to people's faces and just give a little bit of enjoyment, and maybe for us to kind of pause and think about, like I said, the important things in our lives. So obviously we've all been through the ringer for the past, year and a half. And it's been really rough for a lot of us. And so if we can bring that little bit of joy to people, we'll consider ourselves very, very blessed to do so.